One of the biggest problems in today's world is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This region has been plagued by this issue for over 70 years. To find the roots of this problem, we need to go back in history quite far back. In this program, we neither advocate for Israel nor Palestine. Instead, we aim to recount the true history of this region. The judgment is up to you. We need to go back 700 years before Christ, over 700 years ago. In this region, which was called the Land of Israel at the time, 3 prophets of the Israelites named Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac lived in a place called Canaan. The people of this region referred to them as the children of Israel, and they themselves called it the Land of Israel. Around 3,000 years ago, when Israel finds a king named Saul, also known as Talut in history, after Saul, a person named David becomes the king of Israel and makes Jerusalem the capital. David has a son named Solomon who builds the first Jewish temple in Jerusalem, which becomes known as Solomon's Temple. After Solomon's death, Israel is divided into 2 parts. One region is called the Kingdom of Israel, with Samaria as its capital, and the other southern region is called the Kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as its center. This division marks the beginning of the region's first problems. The Jews living in this region had a strained relationship with their surrounding neighbors. Every empire that arose there wanted to destroy them or enslave them. Whenever a new power occupied Jerusalem, they would destroy the temple. But when they left, the Jews would rebuild their city. Now we come to the time of Cyrus the Great, which we want to tell you about. It is written in the Torah of the Jews and the Gospels of the Christians that they were taken into captivity and their temple was destroyed. Cyrus saves them from the Babylonians and provides them with the means to rebuild their temple. Some say this is a story and not a reality, but it is mentioned in the religious books of Jews and Christians. The Achaemenid Empire comes to an end, and the Parthians rise to power. Meanwhile, the Roman Empire is taking shape in Europe and becoming stronger day by day, moving towards the east. Finally, around 63 years before Christ, they fully control the Mediterranean region, including Israel. The Romans did not favor the Jews at all. Therefore, they immediately changed the name of this region to Palestine. What does Palestine mean now? Palestine comes from the Greek word Philista, which the Greeks used to refer to this region. The Romans chose this name to distance themselves from the Jews. The Romans did not enslave the Jews, but they did not provide any help to them either. For instance, they didn't even allow them to engage in ordinary activities like farming or owning a shop. Therefore, the Jews resorted to dealing with money, meaning they established money-changing businesses called shanra where they would lend money to those in need. This was because they were not allowed to engage in ordinary work, and they themselves became bankers and money changers for all Jews. Those who engaged in ordinary work became dependent on loans from them. From that time on, the stereotype developed that Jews were wealthy. It is important to note that the Romans had expelled them from Palestine, and they dispersed throughout Europe and Western Asia. Centuries pass, and Christianity becomes increasingly powerful. Jesus himself was born in Palestine, and his crucifixion takes place in Jerusalem. During this time, Jerusalem transforms into a sacred area for Christians. We arrive at the 7th century when Muslims invade Iran and defeat Byzantium. Palestine falls into the hands of Muslims, And it's important to note that Jerusalem was considered sacred to Muslims because it was the first Qibla direction of prayer for Muslims. However, in 624 AD, the Qibla changes to Mecca. When Muslims capture Jerusalem, they build a mosque there called Al-Aqsa Mosque or Al-Quds Mosque, and from that point on, the city becomes sacred for three major religions: Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. They were blamed by Christians for the crucifixion of Jesus, and they suffered greatly as a result. We come to the 16th century when the Ottoman Empire occupies this region, including Palestine. The Ottomans did not persecute Jews, and they lived comfortably within the Ottoman Empire. However, the majority of the Jewish population was in Europe. In the late 19th century, European Jews, known as Ashkenazi Jews, unite and form a movement called Zionism. The goal of this movement is to achieve the freedom of their homeland. In the early 20th century, tens of thousands of European Jews migrate to Palestine, which was under Ottoman rule. A few years after this significant migration, World War I breaks out. At the end of the war, the Ottoman Empire is completely destroyed, and much of its land falls under British control. The British, along with France and Russia, divide the region into separate countries. Kuwait, Iraq, and Jordan are created, and at that time, Jordan was originally named Palestine. But they removed the name Palestine and designated as Jordan. The remaining piece of land, which is now under Israeli control, is named the British Mandate for Palestine. The Muslim population in this region was much larger than the newly arrived Jews from Europe. This is why tensions between Jews and Muslims started in 1926, and there were even instances of shootings between them. We reach the year 1933, when Hitler comes to power and decides to expel Jews from Europe. He realized that European Zionists were the most powerful Jewish group. In 1937, the British, who were enemies of Hitler and had control over Palestine, refused to allow the Zionists to enter Palestine, and Hitler's plan to expel Jews failed. 2 years later, World War II breaks out, and the Nazi Party claimed that all the misfortunes of Germany were caused by the Jews, which led to catastrophic events that we are all aware of. We arrive at the year 1947, 2 years after the end of World War II, and the United Nations wants to partition Palestine into two parts. The Jewish population of Palestine, who called themselves Zionists, had grown significantly, and there had always been conflicts between them. The United Nations wanted to divide them into two states to end these conflicts. It was planned to establish an Arab state and a Jewish state. Jerusalem was also supposed to be declared an international zone to prevent disputes between these religions. Palestinian Muslims strongly opposed this idea and said, "No, all of Palestine belongs to us." 1 year later, in 1948, Britain evacuates Palestine, and at the same time, the Zionists, who had gained significant power, declared that this is no longer Palestine but Israel. Just like ancient times, a civil war begins, and all the surrounding Arab countries take the side of Palestine, resulting in a battle between Arabs and Zionists. However, the Israelis forced them all to retreat. They gathered the Palestinians on the western coast and to some extent in the Gaza Strip. After gaining power, the Zionists expel more than 750,000 Palestinians from this land, forcing them to go to Jordan and Lebanon. Tensions between Arabs and Jews escalate day by day until we reach the year 1967, and a war breaks out between all Arab countries and Israel, known as the Six-Day War. The Arabs had nothing to say against Israel. Of course, Israel was not alone. It had significant support, But after these 6 days, they completely take the Sinai Desert from Egypt, occupy the western coast, and capture the Golan Heights of Syria. After the 6-day war, more Palestinians are expelled, and many Jews from around the world migrate to Israel, becoming the majority in that region. From that year onwards, these conflicts continue, and there is always a plan for a deal, and the division of this land into 2 parts. However, the Israelis believe that this is their ancestral land, and they want most of it and do not want to divide Jerusalem. After 2007, Palestinians are divided into 2 groups. One group is in the West Bank, and a smaller group is in the Gaza Strip, and neither of them accepts each other. In the Gaza Strip, we have a group called Hamas, whose only goal is the destruction of Israel, and they say they will not negotiate with the Zionist regime. On the other hand, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which controls the West Bank, wants to negotiate with Israel and divide into 2 parts. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, became the first country to move its embassy to Jerusalem, which greatly upset the Arabs. The conflict continues, with Hamas launching rockets into Israel, and Israel responding. Many say that this region is a ticking time bomb, and it could explode at any second. The countdown of this time bomb has been going on for over 70 years, and it is uncertain whether it will explode or if peace will be achieved.